All right, cool. So we are recording. Welcome everybody. Give me 1 second, sorry.
Hello. Hello. Good evening. Happy spring. I've been out in the gardens for the last couple of days. It's been wonderful just to be back out there. Definitely feeling a little reserved about the number of folks that we've lost to COVID. And I think that when I light my candle and burn my sage in my garden for abundance for the year, I'll definitely send up a prayer for them and their families. Just feeling that heaviness, second season heading out to the gardens um, with COVID, basically, and just, wanting to have some sort of expression for those folks. This whole week I've been feeling that way, and I figured out that that would be a good way to honor them and their passing and their families. Not to mention the people suffering through losing out on $15 an hour. That seems like a really extreme and sad reality for folks out there. So happy spring. The spring equinox was March 20th, and the moon was full on March 28th, and now it's waning to new April 11th. I follow the full moon. The moon is just like the seasons. We have spring right now, so we have a lot of energy and we're ready to get out there and be a part of things and to create and energize our worlds and vision. That's the energy of spring, like we're putting everything into action. The winter solstice was December 21st, which was a time to pull back and in and down. And that's the ebb and flow of the seasons. And so then we're visioning. And so all of our visions now are actually put into action with the energy of rebirth and regrowth in the spring. And that also works with the cycle of the moon. So right now we're in the waning of the moon to new on April 11th. And so when the moon is full, and when the moon is new rather, that's the same energy of like winter solstice. So you can like start to vision and dream and pray at the new moon. I pray at the new moon and work that trajectory as it's waxing to full. Uh, just dreaming and visioning and putting all of your energy into action. And then when you get to the full, that's like the fullness and the fruition of whatever you've been working on or creating or visioning at that time. So right now we're in a place where we could pull back and in town, but at the same time we have the energy of getting back out into the gardens. So that could be a reason why I'm heading out into the gardens with a little bit of reserve, because I'm in that space where of pulling back and in and down. There are 13 moons of 28 days according to the Mayan calendar, and Native Americans also observe 13 moons. The Gregorian calendar was created by Pope Gregory XIII of the Vatican. It is irregular and was created to pay taxes. The word calendar comes from the Latin calendarium, which means moneylender's account book. So you have 13 moons, 28 days each. And the word month has come from month. And so it's moon, so it's become month now. So if we do 28 days, this day, yesterday, today is like the second to last day of a 28-day cycle. So when you look at the 28 days compared to our calendars, you have perfect 28 days, 13 28 days. So there's actually 13 moons in every year. And while I was looking at the moons and figuring it out, I've been trying to figure it out for about a couple of years now. And because I want my rhythm to shift, there is thought that because we have shifted our time and our calendar to 12, that we've thrown ourselves out of balance, that we don't have that energy anymore that we used to have, which was connected to the earth and women and creation and we honored creation. And so there is a belief that because we shifted from that 13 moons to 12, that we've lost that. We all know that we've lost that sort of connection, and that could definitely be a reason why. So while I was figuring out these 13 moons, I started to think about time, right? But the class was coming up really quickly, and I didn't have time to figure out time. So this is an introduction for emotional health and stress relief. So if there is a second one, perhaps I'll have information about time and we'll be able to figure out that as well, and how we may have been just shifted out of time as well. I wake up at the dawn now, and I consider that morning instead of like midnight. I I I think that the dawning of the sun is indication of the new day. So we'll see. Herbal medicine is a holistic practice, and when we discuss mental health, we want to treat the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Mental health becomes a challenge from all these different aspects. I'm excited for this class because I want to integrate working with mind, body, and spirit in my practice. Always considering these three aspects, developing a whole being. I think that we will develop whole beings engaging these three aspects. What I want to say, first of all, is that we live in challenging times. So any form of mental disruption should be expected and believed and honored. We want to step out of the shadows with any mental issues that we are having and create dialogue around them, because if you are feeling it, chances are so are others. Although we are in the greatest struggle of our time right now, the benefit is that we can talk about anything. Everything is on the table as we evolve to our next phase as human beings. All the conversation we have now or ever are filed in the collective consciousness for future generations to access. So whatever it is, find a way to have it in everyday conversation. It is hard for sure, but here we are. So because of us, it is us here, people of color, and especially you beautiful women, it's just us, right? We can get down and dirty and unearth our own experiences with mental health. I am of Caribbean descent, and in our community, we all hate that mentally we all have sorry that mentally challenged individual that we accept and lock away and ignore. In my family, it is my brother. My mother was a psychiatric nurse, but the information did not trickle down into practical use in our family. Now that my brother is possibly bipolar, incidents from his childhood are being discussed. But unfortunately, the stigma still exists, and he may never have a formal diagnosis or receive treatment. Pharmaceutical treatments for disorders, as we know, actually leave a lot to be desired, which is why we are here today. The use of herbal preparations is a personal journey with very individual experiences. Any use should be taken with a dose of personal responsibility. Although the benefits are tried and true, for some, results can have wide variation, and the use should never be endeavored without the guidance of one's physician, trained healers, experienced friends, and your own inner wisdom. The plants are our family. In the Native American tradition, we have plants, insect, animal, rock, and human family, all connected. When we engage the plants, we are developing a relationship with an individual, with their temperament, habits, needs, etc. We can spend 1 year with one plant developing the relationship. So I'd like you all to unmute right here. I don't know how much you work with plants or have gardens or any of that, but you can unmute here just so we can talk a little bit. When plants start to grow, what part of the plant do we see first? Anybody?
Like little sprout.
Yeah, a little sprout. What part of the plant though?
Like the bud. The bud. I don't know.
The bud. What comes out of the bud?
Flower.
No, the first part. Well, some plants, some trees have flowers before the leaf.
Oh,
So
leaf.
the leaf. The plant that I'll use as an example is dandelion, right? So
Mm.
dandelion leaves. So did I hear somebody say something?
No.
Someone knows dandelion?
Well, they're all over my lawn,
Awesome.
yeah. Well, not
Yes.
yet.
Yeah, do you see the leaves yet?
I do not.
I'm down a bit south. I think I'm in a different growing zone, so I definitely have leaves right now. Um, so that's the first part of the plant you see. And dandelion blooms really fast. So it goes from leaf to flower, and that that seed head that we all know as children that we blow on and they blow away. That's dandelion. So it goes from leaf to flower to seed, and it's done by May, basically.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. And why do you think that? So why do you think that we can spend 1 year with one plant?
Hmm. Guess because there's so much to know about a plant.
Right? Yeah, we want to know its life cycle. So dandelion, you get the flower, you get the leaves, right? The leaves are edible, right? They're good in wild salad.
Yep.
So health food stores and some better grocery stores, they actually sell the leaves in the stores. Highly nutritious. And later in the summer, you can also cook it because they get much bigger in the summer. You can cook it down in soup. And then the next part of the flower, tenora, that's the next part of the plant, I should say. Tenora, you just
The
said.
flower.
We have the flower, the yellow. Everybody knows the yellow flower of dandelion. And so you're going to gather those flowers together and you're going to make dandelion wine.
Yep.
Dandelion wine is not like, just antioxidants, and red wine is highly nutritious, just like the leaves are. And you're gathering those flowers together and you're creating the wine, and you're stirring. It's about a 2-week process, or you're stirring and you're adding yeast and you're creating this lovely decoction. And you're actually putting it up in bottles, and you're not decanting it until the winter solstice, which is December 21st. And then in the fall, you're going to be looking for the root of the plant to make tincture. And we'll be talking about the preparations later in the class. So that's the life cycle of dandelion. That would be your relationship with dandelion through a whole year. Later on, I'm going to show a PowerPoint, and if any of the plants come to you, if you see a plant that you notice more outside in the wild, that plant has come to you to teach you something about you. That's called your plant ally. And so you want to spend that year with that plant. That would be your first step in. How many people have gardens? Anyone gardening?
I'm trying.
Trying?
Yeah.
You have before, or are you starting now?
In my own, where I used to live, yeah. I'm in the Hudson Valley for 2 years now. Well, yeah, this is 2 official years I've been up here. I have a little garden in New Jersey. And never had success with tomatoes there because our front lawn was in the south. And but even when I planted tomatoes there, I didn't have much success. But I grew really good zucchini and squash,
Nice.
eggplant,
Great.
a lot of herbs.
So you have space this year?
Oh, I have a ton of space. I just have to get it going.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's April 1st is the beginning of it all. So get on out there. How about you, Daisha? Daisha Tino Tenda? Is that how I say it?
Daisha?
Daisha? How about you?
I am hoping to be able to do a little bit of gardening this year. I have some physical challenges that I have to keep an eye on, basically, keep them, be mindful about when I'm doing work outside, trying to bend down and stuff. But I grow herbs as much as I can, and some
great.
veggies.
Awesome. Tino Tenda? Is that how I say it?
Yes, it is. I have a garden in my backyard that I maintain on and off. I think this will be year 2, being consistent with it though. And my mom and I grow a lot of things that are traditionally grown where we're from. We're from Zimbabwe. So we kind of push our luck
Oh, wow.
your climate. But we've been pretty successful. And I started growing flowers in the front yard. So I'm excited to get back into that, knowing which ones survive and which ones don't, with all the little critters that also enjoy
Yeah,
flowers.
nice. Awesome. Okay, I'm an herbalist in the wise woman tradition. My teacher is Susan Weed, and she is in the she is the Wise Woman Center in Saugerties. The wise woman tradition is taking us back to matrilineal culture, where women were equal with men and our voices were heard and heeded. When you engage the plants, it is a process of shifting back and in and down. You're going to need patience, you're going to need courage and faith, and it is stepping into the void. So I studied for a long time, like I've studied yoga and meditation and mindfulness practice and stuff like that. And I understood the void. And then I had an experience where I spent a day in the void. I woke up in the morning and I had breakfast and I felt pretty good. Luckily, I didn't have to go to work that day. But all of a sudden, there was just this jumping off point where the establishment just kind of falls away and everything that you were taught and everything that you know just kind of falls away and you have like a blank page. You know, if you don't understand it or know it, it can be scary, basically. But I had studied for a while and I was like, I think this is the void, you know? And so what you get is a clean slate. You know, you go through this process where you just sort of drift for a day. And then you get this clean slate where you can just build from there. Like all of your beliefs, you can rebuild back all of your beliefs and check in with all of your beliefs and start to understand them on another level. So that's the void. So that happens. The side effects of herbs are clairvoyance and visioning and higher intuition and stuff like that. And so entering the void is one of those things where you get that clean slate. In the wise woman tradition, we are reweaving the cloak of the ancients, and that relationship is with Earth, our mother, who provides us all of our needs, including, by the way, treatment in a pandemic. Herbal knowledge was lost with the witch trials in Europe from 1500 to 1660. We might all know about the Salem witch trials that happened in Massachusetts, but they didn't last quite as long. This was 160 years. I think it was about 50 or 60 years of the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts. The so-called witches who were burnt at the stake were midwives, herbalists, doulas, the people who were responsible for the healthcare of the village, not to mention the LGBTQ community. The definition of the F word, which is a derogatory term used to refer to gay men, is a bundle of sticks or twigs bound together as fuel. And that was the kindling that they used to start the fires. The removal of healthcare from the hands of women was also a means of putting down peasant revolts. Conquer a people, destroy their resources. Sound familiar? Here, the medical industry was born with the creation of universities to which women were denied entrance. The goal of the establishment is to separate us from Earth and make us dependent on the establishment so that they can then deny us basic resources, food, shelter, and water. So of course, we are going to suffer anxiety in that denial. Depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive behavior, drug and alcohol abuse, theft, sexual predation, misogyny. These are byproducts of that denial of our basic resources, not to mention wars which are fought over scarcity. It's also a denial of the power and magic of women. So we'll start with the mind. We're just going to go through mind, body, and spirit and just begin to understand I'll talk about herbs at the end of each section and just begin to understand how we got here as far as intellectual pursuits have gone. So we start with Sigmund Freud, who was the father of psychoanalysis. He was Austrian, and he lived from 1856 to 1939. He invented the dialogue between doctor and patient that we know today. And then he was a colleague of his, Carl Jung, and he was Swiss, and he lived from 1875 to 1961. And the two of them ended up splitting over what they believed psychoanalysis was all about. So Jung founded analytical psychology, and that took us into a spiritual aspect of psychology. And then we have Abraham Maslow. He was American. He was born in Brooklyn. He lived in 1908 to 1970. And he came up with a hierarchy of needs that leads to self-actualization. And so I have a screen. I'm going to share. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this was his hierarchy of needs that lead to self-actualization. And so on the bottom, you see we have basic needs, physiological needs, food, water, warmth, and rest. We have safety needs, security and safety. And those are our basic needs. Then we have the psychological needs, belongingness and love needs, intimate relationships, friends, esteem needs, prestige, feeling of accomplishment. And then at the top, we have self-fulfillment needs, self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creating creative activities. So what happens is that you can't move up or rung until you've satisfied each one. So a lot of people, as we know, are just down in the basic needs, and they don't have the opportunity to move up into the psychological needs and the self-fulfillment needs. So down here is survival, basically. A lot of people are stuck in survival, and they don't get the opportunity to even move up into psychological needs and self-fulfillment needs. But then, of course, psychological needs and self-fulfillment needs have their own psychological issues wrapped up with those, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, all that sort of stuff starts to happen up in the psychological needs and the self-fulfillment needs. Down in the basic needs, you're just surviving every day. It's just basic survival. So you don't even get the opportunity to even ask a question like, who am I? That sort of thing. So those are the hierarchy of needs, and that was Abraham Maslow. So let's get back here. So now, those are the men, right? Those are the men, and there is great issue with all of our knowledge coming from men, eliminating the voices of people of color, and especially women, right? So now, later in the 20th century, we start to expand out, and psychology and psychiatry and all that stuff starts to become more available for us, people of color. And so we have Frantz Fanon, who was from Martinique, and he lived from 1925 to 1961. He was a psychologist, and he started to discuss the psychopathology of colonization. And then we have Jean Shinoda Bolin. She's an American from Los Angeles, born in 1936. She has combined psychology and mythology and given us personality profiles to work from, specifically Greek goddesses. So we'll talk about her a little more down in spiritual. And then we have the great Joy DeGroy, American, Los Angeles, born in 1957. And she wrote the book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And here's a quote from her book. The primary purpose of this book is to encourage African Americans to view their attitudes, assumptions, and behaviors through the lens of history, to gain a greater understanding of the impact that centuries of slavery and oppression have had on our lives. With this understanding, we can explore the role our history has played in the evolution of our thoughts and feelings about who and what we are, as well as our beliefs about how we are to behave. While it is true that some of this evolution has resulted in behaviors that have become both destructive and maladaptive, it is also encouraging that in spite of the oppressive conditions our ancestors endured, they were able to pass on their phenomenal powers of resilience and adaptability. It is essential that we build upon these strengths in ways that will sustain and advance future generations. In this way, we can begin the healing. When we deal with the mind, we are dealing with possibly a chemical imbalance in the brain, which is responsible for diagnoses like depression and anxiety. It is not proven as the cause of these disorders, but deficiencies are found in folks with depression and anxiety. It is not known why or how these deficiencies occur. Here, dealing with the mind, we can discuss our upbringing, social experiences, and personal beliefs, and these experiences can also be discussed in spirit. So the plants, so if you engage the plants first, basically, it's going to lead you to modalities like yoga, meditation, and mindfulness practice. Rise Up Kingston offers mindfulness practice. So starting with yoga, yoga is a moving meditation, right? And so when you engage, it's like prayer. So prana is the breath work, and you get that breath moving through your body. So when you're dealing with stress, emotional health issues, and stress, you want oxygen pumping through your system. You want oxygen in your joints, and that's what yoga helps to do. You also have qigong, you have tai chi, even running. So physical movement, physical exercise is definitely a way of relieving stress and emotional issues. So when you get out, there's anybody a runner? What kind of physical exercise or modalities do we get into out there? Anybody?
I can go. It's wild, as a kid, I hated running. And then I actually went through some trauma, and I started forcing myself to go to the gym as a way to deal with depression and anxiety. And all of a sudden I was running 5 miles a day. And I don't know where the energy came from, but definitely definite proof that your emotions are energy in motion.
Right. Deisha?
I do physical therapy reps every day for my core strength, so my herniation is all right, and leg strength because my leg's a little challenged. And when I'm up for it, I love to go for walks and hikes.
Nice.
Also meditation.
Awesome. Michelle Seda, is that how I say it?
Yeah, Michelle Seda. I like walking when I can. But I have a mini trampoline that I do a lot of exercising on, which saves my knees from impact. And in winter months I do a lot of walking up and down the stairs. But I like walking and hiking the most. I also have physical challenges, so I have to be mindful of my body. Of how I'm feeling, because I do tend to push myself, because once I get going, it just feels so good, and then I do tend to suffer afterwards. So yeah.
Yes, knowing our limits definitely helps.
Yeah.
Let's see, Tina Tenda.
So I used to be really big into playing sports growing up, in middle school, elementary school through high school. And then I started joining local soccer teams, and that's what I was doing before COVID. But since then, I haven't really gotten the chance to. But I would go to the gym also and work out then. My current situation is, as some of the other people have mentioned, I am recovering from an ACL reconstruction. So most of my working out consists of physical therapy, maybe just some stretching, and light walks as much as I can handle as I'm slowly getting my range of motion back.
Right. Nice. Yeah, so that energy, that prana, which we'll talk about in spirit, that's the oxygen just pumping through your system, and that definitely relieves stress and relieves emotional issues like depression. So then, as I believe Tina, Michelle Seda mentioned, meditation also is just the sitting down and spending several minutes just quieting your mind. Um, that those are the places that we want to go, right? Just like mindfulness practice as well. Those are the places we want to go, because that's the place where you can ask yourself, who am I? Right? Like I was saying, down with those basic needs where people are in survival mode, they don't get that opportunity. You don't get the opportunity to say, who am I? Right? But through these modalities, you get that choice. You get that just clear vision in your mind where you're just, all right, who am I? What do I want? And that sort of stuff. Okay, so either you can use these modalities and they'll lead you to the herbs, or you can start with the herbs and the herbs will lead you to these modalities. Because getting out, of course, and learning about the plants and seeing the plants outside, you're going to be walking and breathing and feeling. So one way or the other, you're going to get to these sorts of modalities. So one of the plants that you can use is goldenrod. It is I'm big. My whole work is around native plants. I believe that they are restorative, and they will bring back basically the United States to Native American times when the land was called Turtle Island. And that's my work. I've worked with Native Americans my whole life upstate. I've lived upstate for 14 years now. And when I moved upstate, Spirit told me, find the natives. That was the work. And so I did, and I've been involved with powwows and different actions around Native Americans. And so my work is also with the plants, is the native plants. So goldenrod is wild. It's native. We'll be seeing it in the PowerPoint later on. And it is the flower, and it's tea, and it has the same properties as chamomile. It's calming and peaceful. And so if you're having a tough day and you get home, either chamomile or goldenrod. Goldenrod is wild. The reason why I like to talk about natives and wild as well is because it's free, right? We want to be able to we want the plants to be accessible. So goldenrod is out there, and you'll see it later, like I said, and it's wild, and it's tea, and it's sedative. And then we have motherwort, which is from Europe, whole plant and flower. Is everyone familiar with the botanical names of plants?
Not really.
Not really. So plants have a common name, and they have a botanical name. The common name can change from region to region, but the botanical name is created by scientists, usually men, and it's either Latin or Greek that they make the names out of. So motherwort is the common name, and the botanical name is Leonaris cardiaca, which means lion heart. So what part of the body do you think motherwort is good for?
Your heart.
Yeah. So motherwort, so we'll talk about dosages again later. It's a tincture. We'll talk about the preparations later as well. So motherwort has different dosages. So one dropper full. So these are dropper bottles. And one dropper full is good for anxiety. You can take a dropper full every 5 minutes until the anxiety attack goes away. And then you can take 2 dropperfuls 3 times a day for high blood pressure. And then you can take 3 dropperfuls for to go to sleep. You'll be asleep in about 30 minutes after 3 dropperfuls. And so we're gathering back the information now. So I didn't know the part about sleep until my mother told me. My mother was diabetic, and she had her insulin, her diabetic medication created high blood pressure. So I sent her motherwort, and she was taking motherwort for a while. And then she calls me up on the phone and she says, that medicine you gave me is really good for sleep. And I said, what are you talking about? She was like, I said, how many dropperfuls did you take? She said, I took 3 dropperfuls. And I didn't even tell her that dosage, right? So we're gathering back information. I had never read about it being good for sleep, but obviously, right, if you calm your heart down, you're going to be able to go to sleep, right? So I had never read that in a book, but here was my mother telling me this new information about motherwort. So when you're engaging with what we already know, which are in books right now, but then there might be other aspects of the plant that might come up as well that we can share with one another, that adds to our information about those particular plants. So the native version of motherwort is called passion flower. We'll see that in the PowerPoint later as well, and it's a little different. So motherwort is whole plant and flower, and that you're putting up in alcohol. We'll talk about the preparations later. But then passion flower is whole. I've heard whole plant and flower. I've heard root in alcohol, and it has the dosage, instead of one dropperful or 2 dropperfuls or 3 dropperfuls, it's just 1 dropperful, which is what I've heard about it so far. And then we have rose water, which you can actually spritz on yourself, antidepressant and anti-anxiety. Then we have St. John's wort, which is antidepressant, and that's 2 dropperfuls 3 times a day. The only issue with St. John's wort is that it can make you more sensitive to the sun, so you have to be a little slow and careful with that. And I'm going to jump off into just like talking about yoga and meditation and that sort of thing. I'm going to jump off the ledge, right, and go into some more questionable, I guess, plants that, right now all of us are having a party because marijuana is about to be legal. And so marijuana is everything in moderation, right, including moderation, right? So marijuana is wild. Marijuana grows wild in Iran and Iraq, right? I would love to go over there and see wild marijuana. But it is an antidepressant. It is a sedative. It has real purpose there. It actually helps HIV patients with their appetite, gives them appetite. I don't know if anybody wants to say, but is anybody a pot smoker out there?
Avid advocate, 100%.
Awesome. Yeah, so like I said, everything in moderation, including moderation, but it can be used as well. I am an advocate, absolutely. Another thing is psilocybin mushrooms, right? There was a woman named Maria Sabina. She was a curandera in Mexico, and she used mushrooms ceremonially for the sick. It's we Westerners that took it and just to get high. I have a friend who calls herself she's a psychiatrist, and she calls herself a psychedelologist, I believe. And because she's starting to use mushrooms in her practice, and they have, again, purpose, you know what I mean? So when I was talking about that void earlier, that's kind of where mushrooms will take you. You have to be ready for the experience. You have to be, you have to have personal responsibility in the experience. And you have to have about 4 hours as well, because once you've taken them, you are definitely going to be traveling for about 4 hours. And the other man-made version of psilocybin mushrooms is LSD. And this is another jump off point where you're talking about having personal responsibility and that void. You're heading on into that void. You're opening your mind, basically, and you're going on a journey. And so with LSD, you have to be ready for 8 hours, right? So there's a man named Albert Hofmann. He was a Swiss chemist, And he was looking for a central nervous system stimulant that may help with ADHD. He lived back in the 40s, I believe. And he accidentally absorbed some of it. He had synthesized it in the lab, and he accidentally absorbed it through his fingertips. And he had a wonderful experience. And there's actually a holiday now called Bicycle Day, which is April 19th. And that's for the day that he intentionally took a dose and had a great ride home on his bicycle. So everything in moderation, including moderation. LSD takes quite a bit more responsibility. Mushrooms, you could probably do your entire life, but LSD can cause spinal issues. So you don't want to OD on LSD. You don't want to take too much of it. But it is that mind opener. It is that freeing void space where you get to learn more about you. You get to ask those questions to the universe. Who am I, right? And the important thing about LSD is that your responsibility in it is to duplicate the experience on your own so that you don't have to use it again, basically. And so that's mind. And now we can move into the body. So I would say mind and spirit on the two sides, because you can't touch them, right? But the body is like that physical experience. It's how I'm a physical being. So I experience the world through being physical, and so that's where we are. Our spirit, our soul is in here. And that's how we interact with the world, right? We have experiences, we can touch, we can see, we can taste, right? So when we talk about origins of just information around body, we have Gray's Anatomy that was written by Henry Gray, and he was from England, and he lived from 1827 to 1861. His book is Gray's Anatomy, and it tells you about every part of the body, the functioning of every part of the body. And then in terms of pharmaceuticals, we have physician's desk reference, and that's manufacturers of pharmaceuticals creating a database of all the drugs available. It's now offered for free online as pdr.net. It's no longer available in book form. So these are the things that interact with our body. These are ways of understanding our body. These are ways of learning about our body. And then we can go back to yoga. So now we're back in that physicality, in here. And a lot of times, chronic illness, depression, it causes an energy depletion. So if you have a physical pain, that's going to lower your energy. And that's when you can slip into depression, and that's when you can just have melancholy and that sort of thing. And so you want to understand that about your body. When you, with the mind, when you're asking yourself, who am I? With the body, you're like, so what are the challenges of this body? I guess everyone said that they had physical challenges. Is that right?
I did mention that for myself, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we start, right? We figure out those physical challenges. And we say, so what is this body? What is about this body? I have Achilles tendonitis. I have had an ear infection that has like jacked up my left eye. I have hip pain. I'm older. I'm menopausal, and so I have hip pain when I come home from the garden. When I was very young, I drank a lot, so I ended up with like colon issues and stuff like that. So that's the next phase. Basically, you're working with the mind, and then you're working with the body, and you start to figure the same way, right? What am I guess is what you could ask yourself. What is this body? What are the challenges of this body? What are the limitations of this body? So farming, hauling water, chopping wood, we had more of this in the past, but now, it's all about technology and driving and office work and that sort of thing. But getting out there again, you're farming, you're hauling water, you're getting that breath going again. And that's just physical health. That's health. That's just how the body works, right? We're oxygen, we can't live without oxygen, right? So yoga came to the United States through Swami Vivekananda, and he introduced India, Hinduism, and yoga to the world at the Parliament of the World Religions in 1863. And prana is that breath that you're using in yoga, and that is the breath of life. So some of the herbs that we'll use here, Tenora just told me earlier before we started the class that she just got some burdock. Was it tincture, Tenora?
Yeah, the tincture.
Yeah, so burdock was one of my first allies. When I was by the time I was 25, right, I was a drinker and I was starting to get that colon pain. So burdock tincture, do you know the dosage, Tenora?
I don't, but I have it.
Right. So burdock was one of the plants. So in terms of plant allies, burdock, there you go. Somebody made it for you.
Yeah, my friend made it.
What do I have? I have mine in my tincture bottle. Burdock tincture. I make my own medicine. Is it showing up straight for y'all? Because it's backwards for me, right? So I carry it with me. So I have an herbal medicine chest. My teacher, when I graduated, when I finished my apprenticeship with her, she gave me an herbal medicine chest. And that's just a bag of allies that you carry with you in your purse. And so I have like 6, 8 different bottles that I carry with me. And I'll be talking about those later as well. So one of my first allies was burdock because I had this pain, right, in my colon. I was about 25, and I just didn't, when I found burdock, I worked in Riverside Park in Manhattan for 5 years, and it was all over the hillsides, right? And when I started to learn about burdock, I started to say to myself that, there must be a lot of digestive issues in this area because there's so much burdock on all the hills, So the first thing that I knew was to take the leaves. And so here we are again talking about the 1 year with one plant. You take the leaves and you put them in a jar and you pour on apple cider vinegar. And that's really good for swelling. So you warm up the leaves and you put them on your skin. You want to put a towel in between, but you put them on the skin wherever you have swelling, which came in handy because my husband then fell on a construction site and twisted his knee and tore his ACL and damaged his meniscus. And you haven't heard sorrow until you've heard your loved ones cry through the night in pain. So I had it, right? So when your plant ally comes to you, it can come in the form of someone handing you a root. I had a friend hand me elecampane, which is good for cough, when I first moved upstate and started farming. And that winter, I had the worst respiratory illness I had ever had. So I had already had these burdock leaves in vinegar on my counter by the time my husband fell and had this swelling in his leg, and so in his one leg. And so I took him out, warmed him up, got the towel. This is like one of the first experiences of like, all right, it's put up or shut up time. Let's use this plant and see if it actually works, right? So I got the towel, I got it out, I warmed it up, I put the towel on his leg, I put the burdock leaves on his leg, and sure enough, the swelling went away. So this is how your allies work. Your allies come to you to teach you, and they might come right before, just like the elecampane came for me and the burdock came from my husband. So we'll be talking about tincture. That's your dropper bottle with tincture. But the challenge with burdock was the dosage was 1 dropperful for a year, 1 dropperful an hour for a year. And I was living in New York and I was ADD, and you know how fast, if anyone's ever lived in New York City, you know how fast the days go by. So I didn't even have the patience, right? That's what I was talking about earlier. You're gonna learn patience through this journey. Never mind courage and faith, right? So I was working at Riverside Park. I had already used the leaves in the vinegar, but I hadn't made the tincture yet. I moved upstate. I wanted to farm, and after the void, right, I get this connection to spirit, And so then you start to vision, and then you start to design your life, basically. And so I wanted to farm. That was my dream. I wanted to move upstate. That was my dream. So in 2006, I got a job farming in Westchester, and I moved upstate that summer. And I was so grateful. I was so grateful. So thanks, um, gratitude with the spirit. The relationship with the spirit is wrapped up also in gratitude. So I was so thankful. I was so happy for this gift of spirit. That's what I believed it was. It was a gift of spirit to move upstate and start to farm. So I said, in return for this lovely gift, I'll take burdock for the year. I'll take the dropperful an hour for a year just to help me, because I had this pain in my colon. And to the day, I learned what the illness was about, what I was doing to cause it, and I've been able to manage ever since. So that's how your ally works. So this was my first ally. And then we have comfrey. Comfrey is dried leaf. It's a water base. That's called an infusion. And comfrey is good for arthritis and rheumatism and rebuilding cells when you have injury. So comfrey is perennial, and you're going to be harvesting the stalk in flour and hanging it up to dry to create the dried herb that you're going to be using for your infusion. And we talked about dandelion earlier. Dandelion is really good for the liver. And so I mentioned that I'm menopausal, and I got this thing called formication, which is just like an itching all over the body. And that happens when the liver is overworked, pushing all of the extra hormones that you have during menopause out of your system. It gets overworked. And the symptom is itchiness. I was itchy all in my torso every night. I couldn't sleep. And so dandelion was the treatment for that. It was a dropper full 3 times a day in order to support the liver. And that was a few months ago. I guess that was the beginning. That was probably through the fall. And again, I didn't have the patience. I didn't have the energy. I think I got up to maybe 2 dropperfuls a day. I don't know if I ever got up to 3, but I was suffering, right? So you get to that place where you're just like, all right, I'm gonna do this. So I took the dandelion, and I'm much better now. Just the other day, I started to get a little more itchy, and I was thinking I should probably take the dandelion again. Another plant is horsetail. It's astringent, and the stems are good for bleeding, genital urinary disorders, bedwetting. It has minerals and salts that enrich the blood and strengthen hair and nails. The silica promotes regrowth, strength, and elasticity of connective tissues and treats arthritis, ulcers, and eczema. We'll be seeing them. We'll see burdock, dandelion, and horsetail in the PowerPoint later. And the Native Americans use the horsetail is has been around since the dinosaurs. So it's an ancient plant. It actually showed up in my garden last year in huge amounts. I'll show you in the photograph when we do the PowerPoint. The Native Americans use horsetail for bladder and kidney issues. And there's milk thistle. So I should say burdock, there's a Native American, there's a native one, and there's a European one. Comfrey's from Europe, dandelions from Europe. Dandelion came over here with the Vikings about 600 years ago. And the Vikings weren't interested in conquering. So they just brought the plant and they left. Horsetail is native. And then we have milk thistle, which is from Europe. It's also good for the liver. I took the 2 of them when I had the formication. And then there's nettle. That's dried leaf in infusion, which is a water base. It promotes the optimum functioning of the internal organs. Then we have oatmeal. Oatmeal is iron and protein, and just really good for the nervous system. There's also the milky tops are called oat straw, and you can infuse them in water for an infusion and drink. We'll talk about the preparations later. And then we have skullcap, which is native, and it's really good for pain. When I couldn't get to sleep with that same formication issue, I would take a dropper full of skullcap. Otherwise, when you're in pain during the day, it's like 5 drops. And then we have sorrel. If anybody knows the Caribbeans or is Caribbean descent, we love that red juice that they sell in the Caribbean restaurants. It's in the hibiscus. It's a hibiscus, and it comes from Asia and Africa. And you're infusing the it's a calyx. The calyx is the part of the plant that holds the flower. Is that little brown piece underneath, and it's that part, the calyx. But in Asia and Africa, and this particular variety, it gets succulent, and so it's like this juicy red. It looks like a fruit, but it's this calyx that holds the flower. And we dry it, and then we're doing the same thing. We're infusing it, making an infusion with it. And you can add ginger, and you have to add sweetener because it's way too sour to drink straight. And then we have St. John's wort, again, St. John's wort oil here. So I talked about the tincture earlier, but now we want St. John's wort oil. St. John's wort oil doesn't have the same issue of making you more sensitive to the sun. I do have it here. That's the flower in oil, and it's topical. You use it topically. You rub it on any sore muscles. And St. John's wort oil and St. John's wort tincture together is pure ecstasy. Then we have valerian. It's valerian root. St. John's wort is native. Valerian is from Europe, and we'll see that in the PowerPoint as well. Valerian is good for sleep. The root, for some people, the root is too strong, so you can also make tea with the flower. And then I just want to talk about water. A lot of times we don't get enough water. I didn't start drinking water regularly till I was about 35 years old. So we want to make sure. So there's, again, there's the things that will, so the yoga and the meditation and that sort of thing will bring you to the plants, or the plants will bring you to these things. That physical energy of just moving oxygen through the body. And so we're 98% water, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting enough water. The plants, if you use the plants first, the plants are going to tell you this eventually anyway, because you're going to feel health. You're going to know what health feels like. You're going to, especially with nettle, people drink it instead of coffee, right? Because it gives you this energy boost. So you want to, so you'll want more. You'll want more health, and you'll consider more health. And so I definitely want to put water in there as something that just, it's hydration, it's lubrication, and we're 98% water. So make sure that you are getting enough water. 8-ounce glasses a day, I don't believe is for women. Our medical establishment, their model for their medication, for all the work that they do, is a 6-foot white male. So I tried to do 8-ounce glasses a day. That's 64 ounces. I got up to about 25 ounces, and I was peeing for the rest of the day. So you, again, want to know who am I, what am I, right? And that's the body. And so herbs are a very individual practice, right? So you, like I said, your ally is going to come to you, and each one of us will have a different ally that we start out with. And the same goes for just about any new aspect that you bring into your life. Green leafy vegetables, you want to eat more green leafy vegetables. And if you're eating wild plants, like wild salad, which is what I eat from now until like July, you're bringing in new health, new energy, new spirit into your life. And so whenever you engage in that, you want to know what works for you, right? Sleep, green leafy vegetables, water, exercise, what works for you, right where you are with your physical challenges, whatever it is, honor you and understand yourself in that way. So now we have spirit. So we're back to discussing our upbringing, our social experiences, and our personal beliefs. I was raised Catholic, Pentecostal, and Southern Baptist. By the time I was 16, I was done with church, you know, and I wanted something else. I wanted to learn other aspects. When I was 16, I took my first book about yoga out of the library. And I believe that somewhere in my youth, PBS, one of those channels on television, I saw a yoga class. And it stuck with me from when I was a child, right? We get a lot of like information from birth to 10, 12 years old, right? I became self-aware when I was 12, right? So we gather a lot of information then. And the things that mean the most or ring as truth to us, we probably gathered then. So I've seen old footage of yoga classes, and there was one in particular I was like, that really looks familiar, you know? And so I feel like I on PBS or somewhere I must have seen a yoga class and it stuck with me till I was like 16. So honor yourself, you know, believe in yourself, have faith in yourself, faith and courage that whatever's coming to you is absolutely you and teaching you about you, right? I believe that most of us are hypersensitive. Like the establishment is so fast, so speedy, so go, 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 go. We never get the opportunity to just, you know, experience, you know, so our hypersensitivity can put us in these places where we're feeling, I'm an empath, right? So if I go out into a crowd, I can pick up energy from people and I'll pick up that energy and I'll come home and I'll feel bad and I won't even know why. I'm like, I had a really great day. Why do I feel like this? But I probably picked it up from someone else. So hypersensitivity is something to really pay attention to. And again, so in spirit, right, we had the mind and we had the body, right? And so we had the intellect, the mind, and then we got into the body. And spirit is just that other, right? The whole range around us, you know, that aura, chakras, all that sort of stuff. And so that's when we begin, that's sort of like the jumping off point when you start to engage the plants. Because when you start to engage the plants, you're engaging spirit. That is, it's a spirit that runs through all things. And it's what every religion, every belief system is trying to encapsulate, trying to create a method of reaching spirit. You can just walk out in nature and reach spirit. You can engage with plants and reach spirit. That's the nature. It's the spirit that runs through all things. And so we're all connected. That's how we're all connected. Like I said, we have our human family, our plant family, our rock family, our insect family. And so that is the same spirit. In an animal is the same spirit that gives us life. In a plant, that's the same spirit that gives us life. In a rock, that's the same spirit that gives us life. And that's how we're all connected. We talked about yoga before. I could just go on and on about yoga. The om, when you start a yoga class, that's verbalizing consciousness. I talked about prana as the breath of life. And I talked about meditation, mindfulness practice. One thing that I found that for me personally is a psychiatrist who's talking about childhood emotional neglect. So I grew up Caribbean, and they didn't value me as a girl. Like I was invalidated. Like nothing that I thought or wanted to express was given validation. I wasn't believed. I wasn't supported. I wasn't, so much that it's almost like myself disappeared. Like myself never existed, or myself was never created. And so when I moved upstate and I started farming and I started to do the things that have always resonated with me, that's when I found myself. That's when I found self-worth. I didn't even have that, right? Um, you have to develop it if you don't have it. Like when I was in my late 20s, I believe when I started to study plants, I started with horticulture before I went into agriculture. And when I started to study plants, I used that imagery of like planting a seed of self-esteem within myself that could grow, that I could nurture, and it could grow, you know. So so childhood emotional neglect is just no recognition of who you are, what you are, why you are, how you are, and no support for who you are, no support for anything that you believe. And it was because I was a girl, you know. I believe now that my parents just wanted me to be there for them for my whole life, you know. So childhood emotional neglect is an actual thing that you can find that's online. So if that resonates with you, that's something to look at. So we're in the age of Aquarius, right? It's the opportunity to become more humane, seeing one another, developing community, and changing the establishment, right? The establishment is authoritarian. My parents are authoritarian, right? Do as I say, not what I do, basically. And so it's something that we have to shake off. It's something that we have to fight against. It's something that we have to say, no, that is not what we believe, right? We believe in free will, so a lot of times when we're dealing with these folks that are tyrannical, Donald Trump, and then we have Bolsonaro in Brazil, and we have the leader of India right now. They're all bringing this authoritarianism into their establishments, and people are fighting back, right? These folks, for all we know, right? When you talk about empire, you're talking about people who are controlled. In order to maintain empire, right? These folks didn't have free will. Their parents told them what to do. Their parents said, go to this school. Their parents said, you're gonna grow up to be this, like George Bush Jr., you're gonna be president, right? And that was just his track, you know what I mean? So they don't necessarily know free will. So when you don't know free will, you're kind of miserable, right? And all you know is being miserable, and so you're going to make everybody else miserable. And all you know is to control everything around you, control the people around you, control your world, right? And that's you're just missing free will, right? So we can talk about religion. We can talk about any beliefs that we have, our upbringing, our social experiences, our personal beliefs, and I like to talk about Europa and Voodoo and Santeria and that sort of stuff, because those are earth-based. They're earth-based beliefs, I should say. They're not necessarily religions. They're earth-based beliefs, and the plants and the animals and all that Hinduism, the plants and the animals are very important to their belief systems. And so when we're engaging the plants, we are engaging those sorts of beliefs, and we have the opportunity to learn, to relearn, I should say, like I said, reweaving the knowledge of the ancients, because that's what we were. We were connected to the earth. The establishment seeks to pull us away constantly, and get us into cars and get us into technology. And I feel really bad for younger people. I feel really bad for you millennials, because you are attached to, it's almost like you're part machine with your phones. And if we took it away, you'd probably die, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's very difficult, but this is where we are, right? And we just want to work through. We just want to have the conversations. We just want to share. We just want to show that there is another way and there is this spirit that runs through all things. So some of the folks I want to talk about, Louisa Tish wrote a book named Jambalaya, and she just gives us an introduction to Yoruba. There's Clarissa Pinkola Estes, she's Hungarian. She wrote a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. There's Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore. They wrote The Great Cosmic Mother. And then again, there's Jean Shinoda Bolin, who's The Goddesses in Every Woman. So when I was in 3rd grade, I had a very enlightened Black female teacher, and she taught us the mythology. She taught us Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and that's another one of those things from my childhood that stuck with me that I always resonated with, right? So like I said, Jean Shinoda Bolin has taken the Greek goddesses and created a whole her psychiatrical practice is all wrapped up. She works with people with the Greek goddesses. And her book is called Gods and Goddesses in Every Woman. She also wrote Gods in Every Man. And one of her latest books is just about Artemis, who is the goddess of the hunt in Greek mythology. So here's a quote from her book. This book describes a new psychological perspective of women based on images of women provided by the Greek goddesses that have stayed alive in human imagination for over 3,000 years. This psychology of women differs from all theories that define a normal woman as a woman who conforms to one correct model, personality pattern, or psychological structure. It is a theory based on absorbing the diversity of normal variations among women. So, speaking of the void here, right, we have an other modality that resonates with me in particular, is folks, there are individuals who channel energies from the universe, basically, and they come through these people, and these people speak from this entity that enters their body. This is just a jumping off, right? Just another one of those, like the void that I talked about before, talking about marijuana, talking about mushrooms, talking about LSD, that jumping off point. We're talking about that void again that you engage. And so they have an entity that comes through them, and they channel this person that brings us wisdom. So there's Jane Roberts, the Seth book, The Nature of Personal Reality. There's Theo, and now there's Abraham, Esther, and Van Hicks. And so from Jane Roberts to Abraham, Esther is the one that channels, but she channels a group of entities now, and so bringing wisdom. And so they're online, they're on YouTube, and that's just another, just to push us out there, just to push us into that void where we have the opportunity to engage the whatever our truth is, whatever comes to you and says, hey, this is you, and it might be different from your upbringing, it might be different from your spouse, it might be different from your friends, and your coworkers and that sort of stuff, but it is you, and honor that within yourself and accept it and say, this is something that resonates for me. I started out with Jane Roberts in the Seth book, and I was like 25, 27, something like that. And my Christian upbringing came rushing back to me. And so when Jane Roberts actually passed, so there were no more books available, and then Theo came on the scene, and I said to myself, I'm not really gonna continue with that because it's kind of crazy, basically. And if it's for me, right, honoring, respecting myself, it'll come back in my lifetime. So I skipped the Theo. Theo's still going there out in California. But then I moved upstate and I started farming. Someone handed me Abraham, and off I went again. So I respected that it came back to me in my life again, and put it down in my late 20s. And I moved upstate when I was 39. So I hadn't even considered any of it. But here someone handed me this information again. And so I got right back into it. And it's something that works for me. So it really comes down to you as an individual, knowing you, right? Who am I? And then what am I? Right. And then here it's like developing, once you stepped into that void, you get to create and develop your life. So, in the establishment, right, we had the January 6th run on the Capitol. And in that form, we're talking about psychotic self-hatred, right? We're these extreme white folks basically are afraid of their shadow, and their shadow is us, right? So it's psychotic self-hatred. They're suicidal, and we can pray for them, right? That's all we can do, because goodness knows they're not going to hear anything else from us, right? And it's white psychosis. So the face of America is changing. In 2030, I believe, of minorities are going to be the majority. There are going to be more of us than there is of them. And so this is them just breaking down, right? They're breaking down. They're having psychosis. They can't believe that this is not a white country. Never mind that Native Americans were here when they got here, right? Never mind that they dragged the Black folks over here to do their bidding, to build their country for them, Never mind all of that, right? What? This is not a white country? So we're having white psychosis. It's just a breakdown of all those beliefs that kept them going for 400 years, right? To deny that this was this hideous thing that they did to another human being, and that this human being would always be underfoot, and this human being would never be equal. But here we are, we're rolling up with that equality, right? Rolling up and saying, no, this is what we get because we built this country, And then it's also war. This is the nature of war, right? So when we get into the plants, we're going to talk about a plant named borage. The flowers of borage. I don't think I have borage in the PowerPoint. We're talking about the flower of borage. It's an annual. So we have the lifespan of plants. So they're either annual, biennial, or perennial. Annual means they grow and flower in 1 year. Biennial means they grow 1 year just all green, and then the second year, burdock is a biennial, and so it flowers in the second year. And then we have perennials that grow and flower. Echinacea in particular doesn't flower until the second year, but then it flowers every year after that, up to 4 or 5 years. But at the same time, the seeds are falling, so it looks like they're perennial. They are perennial, but you always have more. The stand that you have will always multiply and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So borage is an annual, and it's this beautiful little purple flower. You can take that purple flower and put it in some water and drink it and just have a lovely day. It just sort of lifts your spirit, especially out in the garden on a beautiful sunny day. Catnip is for cats. People use it for cats, but it's also a really good smoke. So if you're not necessarily into marijuana, catnip is not as strong, but it does have a little bit of sedative quality to it. And once again, right, wild and free, right? And so here we can also talk about motherwort for anxiety. That's the spirit, the energy of our spirit. And passion flower we can talk about here. Nettle we can talk about here. Nettle is I think I talked about side effects as clairvoyance and vision and that sort of thing. So nettle, my mother, it's also good for diabetes. So I had her taking nettle as well. And she called me up one day and she said that she had a flashback to her childhood. And I think it was very disturbing because she stopped using nettle. So that's where the faith and the courage come in, and that's that void space as well. So you're going to be engaging yourself as you, whatever issues you've had in your life, those things are going to come up, especially with things like burdock. Burdock has a root that is at least a foot into the ground to Nora. So when you start taking it, it is digging deep and pulling up issues that you may not have wanted to deal with or thought that you would deal with or whatever. So that's where the faith and the courage come in. And you want to maintain and believe in spirit, that spirit's with you. Spirit is not this, authoritarian God that doesn't like us because we're female or whatever. It's this wonderful entity that is here for us. As I was talking about Jane Roberts and Abraham, what they talk about is the law of attraction, right? So what you put out into the universe is what you get back. That's the nature of the universe. It's magnetic, right? They talk about like attracting like, right? And so that's what you're dealing with when these issues come up. You are meeting you. You are meeting you and you are learning you. And so the faith and courage come in so that you know that it's the spirit that runs through all things that's bringing you this information, and everything is going to be okay. That's the faith and the courage. And then we have passion flower here, and we have St. John's wort here. And we also have wild bergamot. It's this lovely lavender flower. You can harvest the leaves before the plant flowers, and you can harvest the flowers when it flowers. And it's a tea. It's a lovely tea, and it has just a little bit of a kick. When feel like spirit speak messages. And so then also we have alcohol, right? Alcohol is a drug, right? But once again, moderation in all things. If you're having a tough day, right? Some people go home, they have a glass of wine, right? Moderation in all things, right? Then also here there's the marijuana, there's psilocybin mushrooms, there's LSD, and those again are the jumping off into the void. Okay, so now we can get down to the categories of herbs. We have nourishers. Those are the safest, and they can be taken for any length of time with few side effects. That's borage, that's comfrey, that's oat straw. Then we have tonifiers. They act slowly in the body and have a cumulative effect. They build the function of organs and systems in the body. They have some side effects, but they're short term. And they are taken in a small dosage for an extended period. The more bitter, the less needed. Mild tasting tonics can be taken for longer periods. That's blackstrap molasses, that's burdock, that's comfrey up here as well. Dandelion, echinacea, motherwort. Then you have sedatives and stimulants. They have a rapid reaction. It may be unwanted. Some parts of the person can be stressed to help other parts, and they might cause strong side effects. Reliance can lead to withdrawal when use is ceased. Habitual use can lead to loss of tone, impairment of functioning, and possibly physical dependency. That's catnip, that's passion flower, that's motherwort. So that's where your personal, that's where your personal, forget the word, comes in. That's where you want to be responsible. Your personal responsibility comes in. Because just like, pharmaceuticals are still, 30% of pharmaceuticals are still made from plants. Most of them are man-made in a lab, but 30% of them are still made from plants. So before pharmaceuticals, this is how we took care of ourselves. Then we have the potentially poisonous herbs. They're potent medicine. They stimulate intense work on the body and spirit. They're taken in small amounts only for as long as needed, and unexpected side effects can occur without respect for their power. You consult different herbals and herbalists when contemplating use. And that's like Elecampane, Golden Seal, and Poke. And now we have the preparations. So we have a decoction, that's fresh herb placed in water which is then boiled down to half or a quarter of the original amount by slow evaporation. The one that I've used is yellow dock. Yellow dock root is really good iron, especially for women. And so I've used that as a decoction. And we have a honey, fresh plant material, fresh herb filled to the brim of any size mason jar. This is sage honey. And you cover it with honey and you fill it up with honey. And this in particular, sage is good for colds and cough and headache, actually. Garlic you can use, you can make garlic honey. That's really good for getting your immune system going. You can slather it on buttered toast. Some people use it to season meat. Some people use it to make salad dressing. And then you have an infused oil. Like I said, this is St. John's wort. That's the flower in oil. And then this is comfrey. It's fresh. It's fresh plant material, free of moisture. So comfrey in particular, you have to lay it out for a day until it gets dry, out of direct sunlight. And then you chop it and you place it in a mason jar, and then you submerge it in olive oil. Olive oil has the longest shelf life of any oil. I do have sunflower oil now that I'm going to use this year because I found someone that sells it in the Hudson Valley. So I bought a big old container of it. It's about, I don't even know, it's about 10 pounds maybe, the size of that container. So I'm going to try sunflower oil. Sunflower oil is what Native Americans use. And so I, again, I want to be native. Olive oil comes from Italy and Greece. This particular one comes from Greece. So I've used it for years and years and years. But with the pandemic, I really wanted to become regional. And so I've got sunflower oil that I'm going to use. And I think it has a pretty, I haven't looked it up, but I think it has a pretty long shelf life. Then we have tincture. That is alcohol based. This is Graves grain alcohol. You can use 100 proof vodka, but this works out. This size of Graves grain alcohol is $32.99, and it's 98. It's 990 proof, so you can actually use half water. 100 proof vodka is about the same price, $32.99 for the same size, but you can't add water. It's 100 proof. This is 190 proof, so you can add water and you have twice as much for the same price. And this is a dandelion tincture. So this is whole plant. This is whole plant in flower. You can either do whole plant dandelion in flower, or you can do root in flower. And roots are generally harvested in the fall. And so you're filling it again with 100 proof, with the plant material up to the top. And then you're adding in your alcohol. And you want to let this sit for 6 weeks. The honey, sage honey will sit for 6 weeks before you use it, but garlic honey can be used right away. Comfrey infused oil, you actually want to decant it, take the plant material out at 4 weeks because it gets kind of stinky. This has been, St. John's wort oil has probably been in this oil for a year, since last season. And it flowers in like June, July. And then we have, and you want to put, I forgot, you want to put wax paper under the lid because it'll rust. Wax paper. Then we have an infusion. So it's dried, any size mason jar, right? You have quart size, you have half gallon size. This is pint size. This is half pint size. But when you want to get a good amount and like practical, on a daily basis, you can use infusion. So this is 2 handfuls of dried herb. And so you have the numbers on the side. So it's like up to the 8, it's like 8 ounces of herb, two handfuls. If you just want to be folksy about it, you just put 2 handfuls in there and you pour on boiling water. So this is nettle. This is dried nettle. You can see it. Dried nettle. And we're going to put it in the jar. This is my own dried nettle from my own garden. When you dry plants, you're going to harvest them. You want to get nettle before it flowers. It flowers by about the 15th of May. So you want to get it before it flowers, because if you get it after, once it's flowering, you can have stomach issues using the infusion. So you're filling it up to about here, 2 handfuls, and you're pouring on boiling water, and you're letting it sit at least for 4 to 6 hours or overnight. In our rush lives, our busy lives, it usually works out to just let it sit overnight. And then you want to strain off the green, put it in your compost pile, and then you want to drink it within 36 hours. After that, it is rancid, but especially with nettle, you can then use it as a hair rinse. So that's that, back to that 1 year with one plant, because the plants have different uses in different stages. So that's dried herb, and that's an infusion. Then we have salve. This is comfrey salve. It's really good for rash. It's good for cold sores, pimples, bee stings, insect bites. I mix it with plantain. It's not the banana plantain that we know. It's a leaf called white. Native Americans called it white man's foot, because everywhere they went, this plant came up. Very useful. It can also, plantain leaves can also be used in wild salads, so they're edible as well. But this is the infused oil of plantain, and so I blend them. I blend the comfrey and the plantain together to make a salve. And so you take beeswax and you melt it down in a pan, and then you add the oil. And so you add more beeswax to make it harder, and you add more oil to make it softer. And then we have a vinegar. So apple cider vinegar has its own properties, right? Some people drink a couple a day. There's all kinds of ways of using it online for your health. And this is mugwort. Mugwort's found in pretty much any empty lot that you walk by. But it's really good for your regulating your menstruation. It's really good for menopause, just smoothing out your mood. And so it's the same thing. You're gonna fill the jar with plant material, and then you're gonna pour on the vinegar, and you're gonna let it sit for 6 weeks. And you can use it like any vinegar in your kitchen. Mugwort is floral, has a floral flavor. One of my other favorites, or my first 2 favorites, were mugwort and white pine. White pine is like a freshness. It's like the sensation of mint in your mouth, like a sucking on a mint candy, but without the mint taste, if you can understand that. And white pine is vitamin C. So now we're going to take a look at the keynote. I'm going to look through some herbs here. Can everybody see it? Here we go. So here are the herbs. We have natives first, and they're wild. So this is burdock. I'm going to show you what they look like right now, and then show you what they look like when they're in flower. So this is burdock, and that's what it looks like in April. And that's what it looks like in flower. When you go hiking, you get those brown burrs on you when you come home. That's burdock seed head. So this flower is going to turn into that brown fuzzy thing. It's actually the inspiration for Velcro. This is goldenrod. That's what it looks like now. And that's what it'll look like in the summertime. And so you're harvesting those yellow flowers. The leaves earlier throughout the season actually can be harvested and eaten in wild salad as well. And then this is horsetail. I took this photograph yesterday. So that's what horsetail looks like right now. And then that's what it looks like when it's older, when it's grown. And so you're harvesting, you can eat the one before, the short brown one, you can eat when it probably gets about this tall, and you can eat those fresh. And then the green one, you can harvest and dry. And that's when you get the silica and all for the connective tissues and all that sort of stuff. This is nettle. This is what nettle looks like right now. And this is what nettle looks like when you're gonna harvest her. Stinging nettle, right? Not for the faint of heart. When you brush your hand under the leaf, you get a sting. So be very careful. Probably want to harvest with gloves, but totally worth it. Totally worth the harvest. Just a really good nourishing herb. If you leave this class with anything, let it be nettle. Then we have the cultivated. This is passion flower. So passion flower is native to Florida, down south, basically. And so you have to keep it inside during the winter. Its temperature range is 55 degrees at night and 75 degrees in the daytime. So that's what it looks like right now. That's my living room, and that's my passion flower plants. I didn't even know that I would be able to care for plants this long. It's probably been about 4 or 5 years. And I started out in little pots, and now I'm transplanting to bigger pots, just waiting for enough plant material so that I can make the tincture. Don't want to buy it in the store. I prefer to make my medicines. And so if I don't have enough plant material, I'm not going to buy it in the store. I'm going to wait till I have enough plant material. I think that's like my relationship that I've developed with passion flower. She's taught me patience. She's taught me a routine. You have to water the plants every 4 days. So I didn't even think I could do that when I first started, but here I am 4 years later, still with the same plants. And that's her flower. And so you want to harvest. I've read that, like I said, it's the root that you make the tincture out of, or it's the flower, the whole plant and flower that you make the tincture out of. This is St. John's wort. This is how she looks right now. And this is her in flower. And so you're harvesting all those tiny flowers. You can actually cut low all the green underneath, like down to the stem, and put that in a jar. So you can make tincture and oil out of St. John's wort. And you have skullcap. She has teeny tiny flowers. All those little dots on there are her flowers. And that's like June as well. And that's her teeny tiny flowers. On the side is anise hyssop, which is like a licorice tasting Native American cough syrup. Those big flowers on the left. But then these teeny flowers, that's about as big as the flowers get on skullcap. And you want to harvest it in flower like that and make a tincture. And then we have Europe wild. There's dandelion. That's what dandelion looks like right now. And you can harvest those greens and she'll still flower. And that's the flower. Those are the flowers that you're gonna collect to make dandelion wine. I've tried it once and all I got was hooch. So I've had it really flavorful and tasty, but mine was straight, strong, crazy hooch. So I have not succeeded in making dandelion wine yet. This is motherwort. This is what she looks like right now. And this is what she looks like in flower. And so you want whole plant in flower. make a tincture. And then the cultivated, this is milk thistle. Milk thistle's an annual, so you're not going to get her in the ground probably until May. You can start the seeds now and then plant out the plants in May. And that's what she looks like in flower. And that's the flower is the part that you're actually going to make the tincture out of. Very prickly, just a real annoyance, even to like, because actually what you want is the seed that you're making a tincture out of. So when that flower dies back and dries, you're picking those flowers and then it's just crazy prickles in there. So you want to harvest it with, you're pulling out the seeds. You're actually pulling that flower head apart to get to the seeds. And you're making a tincture, and that's good for liver. And then valerian, that's what valerian looks like right now. And that's what she looks like in flower. So you either want the root for sleep, and if it's the root is too strong, you want the flower. You want to dry, you want to harvest and dry the flower for sleep. So that's that. Stop sharing. And so I can just talk about dosages here. Like I said, skull cap, 5 drops when you're in pain, probably heading out for the day. 1 drop or full for sleep. Elecampane is a root tincture, and that's good for cough. And then we have poke. Poke is native. Skull cap's native. Elecampane is from Europe. Poke is native. It's on the USDA poisonous list. Treatment for COVID. It's the root in tincture. It's 1 drop. This is how potent it is. It's 1 drop an hour, up to 12 hours a day for antiviral. This is motherwort. Motherwort, like I said, 1 drop or full every 5 minutes when you're having an anxiety attack. 2 dropperfuls 3 times a day for high blood pressure, and you'll have results in about a month. 3 dropperfuls for sleep. You'll go to sleep in about 30 minutes. Elderberry. Elderberry is preventative for COVID. I'm taking elderberry and echinacea now. I've taken it the entire time through COVID for preventative. And colds, there's elderberry syrup that you can actually purchase in any drugstore, CVS, any of those stores. They have an elderberry syrup. Burdock, digestive issues, headache, 1 dropper full, like I said, an hour for a year. But when I have like my digestive pain and stuff like that, if I take dropper full for like a day, I usually have results after I took it for that year. And then milk thistle, that was the flower I talked about. That's good for liver. And dandelion's also liver support, but it's like a multivitamin, very nutrient rich. And that's 1 dropper full 3 times a day. Yeah, 1 dropper full 3 times a day. And then we have our salves. This is a comfrey salve. This is jewel weed salve. This is all my medicine chest that I carry with me in my pocketbook every day. So I just want to leave you with a quote from Louisa Tish, Jambalaya. We have learned the true definitions of words, which have in the past been shrouded in fear and perverted by misinterpretation. Words such as witch have been redefined in the light of their true origin and nature. Instead of the evil, dried out old prude of patriarchal lore, we know the witch to be a strong, proud woman, wise in the ways of natural medicine. We know her as a self-confident freedom fighter, defending her right to her own sexuality and her right to govern her life and community according to the laws of nature. We know that she was slandered, oppressed, and burned alive for her wisdom and her defiance of patriarchal rule. The Salem witch hunts are over, and women openly call upon the goddess by her many names: Aphrodite, White Buffalo Woman, and Kali. One of the often stated objectives of the woman spirit movement is to overcome the ism brothers: racism, sexism, including heterosexism and classism, the sons of patriarchal conditioning. Thank you very much for being here. Any questions?
Been on the questions. Awesome, Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I have a question. Can you talk a little bit more about like what the wise woman tradition is and how you got into that?
I was starting to study horticulture, and I realized that horticulture was scientific and male dominated and really quite wasteful. I had worked in penthouse gardens, and the amount of waste that they had, they were just throwing away plants. I planted an entire garden with the plants that they threw away. So I wanted another version of the same teaching. And so I found Susan Weed. I was studying at Brooklyn Botanic Garden there, and I went to the library and I looked up herbalism. And I can't swallow pills. My father can't swallow pills. My brother can't swallow pills. So I needed something else. I couldn't take pharmaceuticals. And so most of them are liquid, easy to digest, easy to get down. And I found her in a book in the library. And there was another one called Herbal Bear that's like on the top of Ulster County. But Susan Weed was more affordable, and she actually has scholarships for women of color. So I ended up there.
Awesome, very cool. I don't know if you have any upcoming events or workshops or
I'm going to teach myself at the end of at the last Saturday of every month. I'm going to teach a class: spring herbs, summer herbs, autumn herbs.
It's gonna be online.
Yep, just like this, Zoom, in my kitchen, my dining room / kitchen.
So I'm gonna give everybody that's registered, or I'm gonna give you everybody that's registered email, and then if you want to shout them out with the dates of that, definitely let people know.
Okay.
Tino Tenda, is that? I see your hand is raised. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So I am actually a graduating senior at the University at Albany, and I'm really interested in pursuing some sort of career around maybe naturopathic medicine, herbalism, just like holistic and natural healing. And I was just wondering if you had any advice for me moving forward with that path.
Yeah, there is a naturopath school, I believe, that's really good in Florida. I think there's one in Manhattan as well, but the one that I've heard the most about is in Florida. There is like accreditation. Like the Wise Women tradition is a apprenticeship program, so there aren't any certificates. I mean, you get a certificate after you finish the apprenticeship, but like as far as like accredited, there's the herbalists who are in the folk tradition, and then there's the herbalists that are scholars. So there is that path. There is the naturopathic medicine is the one that is closest to what I'm teaching right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all. Thank you everybody for joining us. Sarah, thank you again.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll have you back again for some more workshops in the future.
Awesome.
Next workshop we have coming up is the 8th of April with Rusia, and that's going to be a workshop on embodied organizing. So I hope to see y'all there, and hope everybody has a good night. And
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Y'all.
Bye.